Thousands of people have been influenced by the explosive ministry of John Wimber through the Vineyard Church movement that he helped to found. And in the 20 years since his death, his legacy continues to grow. Take a look.
In the 1980s, John Wimber became one of the founding leaders of the Vineyard, bringing a fresh expression of the Holy Spirit that continues today, with a network of over 2,400 churches worldwide. He also greatly influenced the Catholic charismatic movement. And through Vineyard music, he made an indelible impact on praise and worship that continues to influence worship leaders today. In the 20 years since his death in 1997, his daughter-in-law Christie has extended his legacy. Christie is also breaking new ground on her own by focusing on leadership, helping those with mental health issues, and the training and planting of new churches.
Please welcome back to the 700 Club, Christie Wimber. It's great to have you
It's
here.
So good to be here, actually.
Boy, you know, you grew up next door to the Wimbers. I didn't realize that. What were those years like?
I was just a child, so it wasn't anything. You know, when you kind of are with someone all the time, you don't realize the impact until much later, so it really didn't.
So John is actually your father-in-law.
Yes.
You're married to his son, Sean.
Yes, the good-looking one. Yeah.
Well spoken, well said.
And wise.
Talk a little bit about John's influence on the church, because even as we were just watching that piece, I was thinking those were the years of the Jesus movement and just a fresh wave of the Holy Spirit flowing through the body of believers. Yeah,
I think it's phenomenal, actually. I think the older that I get and the more that I see around the world, and then I see his influence on a deeper level. You know, when you're younger, you don't realize the impact, even though it's amazing and God's doing incredible things, which is really what we saw, you know, really all growing up. And then you don't really realize those things until you yourself become a leader or you see the impact of what is really taking place throughout the world. And so I get the opportunity to do that. And so I have this great privilege where I see people, I talk to people, people tell me their stories, and it is remarkable, actually.
John has given, or the family has given, all of his writings and his papers to Regent University. Tell me a little bit about that and what that entails.
Yeah, so I think it was, you know, to be honest, I think it was 2006, 2008. I know it's over a 10-year project, and that's what my mother-in-law wanted to do. She said, you know, I want these protected. And to be honest, I didn't realize then either the impact or kind of what we were doing, but all of these years later and really focusing on that project and making sure not just to have things for study, but to have things preserved. Because it's one thing like when someone's alive and they're impacting the world, but to be 21 years later and to have things preserved where people can come and study, and people that are not just new to the Vineyard, but to the church worldwide can come study our history. That's really what the whole project was. It's phenomenal.
You know, I remember a friend telling me she had been somewhere where John was speaking. It was a large gathering. And the thing that most impressed her and was impressive to me, I've remembered it all these years, is that when he came up to the podium, he said, we're just going to take a moment and wait for the Holy Spirit. And he just stopped. You know, not a lot of people who feel like they're supposed to be there to give a message are confident to do that. And he waited, and then boom, you know, the Spirit of God fell on the gathering. It was pretty impressive. You and your husband, Sean, have pastored a church out in Yorba Linda for 11 years.
Yes, we did.
And last year felt called to close the church. Why? What happened?
Well, there were several things that happened, and it was a long process. It was over a 2-year process. But we had just, I knew that, I knew that my season was done, and we had tried to find somebody to take over, for those 2 years. Couldn't find anybody. It was a whole, obviously deal. But I really felt like the Lord began to speak to me about the importance of the life of a church. Like, obviously, I could have handed it off to somebody. But it's not just handing it off, it's doing it well. And it's finishing what God's asked you to do well. And it's not just about getting rid of something. I love these people. I mean, these people, we had 26 outreaches going. I mean, it was phenomenally a lovely church that loved the community, loved people, reached into the community. And so there was no model for it. And so it's not, you don't want to just get rid of something. You want to finish that season out well. And so it was one of those things that was very risky, because almost like what you just said, kind of waiting for the Holy Spirit and asking the Lord to speak, that you don't realize, is this the Lord, until after you do it. And it's very much been the Lord. My husband was kind of declining physically a bit, and there was other things that it was just very much the Lord for us. And the people were amazing. But it was heartbreaking because it was an end of a season.
Well, when something goes well, no one wants it to end.
Yeah, and honestly, we still have some things going. So it's sort of like people do life together, so you can't really, cut that off. People tend to like each other and
which is
stick
what
with
you're
each other.
supposed to be doing anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's, the church still is going, in different ways. It's amazing.
But God has called you into a number of new areas, but a significant one, mental health.
Yes.
In what way?
Well, I feel like the Lord had got my attention, I don't know, some years ago. And, it's fun. Actually, it's interesting, Terry, because, here John, one of the things that John's known for is healing. And I felt like the Lord had completely shifted me in the area of healing. And I was like, one day, all of a sudden, I just saw, wait a second here. Like, we've been talking about physical healing for so many years, and God's done remarkable things. But there's 1 in 4 that are struggling with mental health in our culture, which means in our healing prayer meetings or our church services, if we're not acknowledging that, we're basically missing the people that are sitting in the seats.
Yeah.
And the Lord just began to open my eyes. Like those times that you have where the Lord just kind of makes you aware. I was completely unaware before. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
I thought if you were depressed, then, that was a faith thing. I mean, the Lord really had to change me. And that's really what's happened.
Well, and where mental health is concerned, I think a lot of people don't want to face it if they don't have to, unless you have someone in your family that you're having to contend.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like God's speaking to you about that, Christie?
I just feel like it's very important that we minister to the real world and not the ideal world as the church, and that it's not about building our churches, it's about seeing the culture and being able to minister effectively, and that's what's happening in our culture. And so I see it's very important that we open our eyes and see what's happening in the world. And get equipped, like just practical things, especially because I've led a church. I realize how scary it can be, but there's simple things that you can do to get equipped. And it's really just to love people better. At the end of the day, it's not about fixing people. It's not our job to fix people. It's our job to love people. And so I think that's important.
Well, mental health certainly is on everybody's mind with the recent happenings in the country.
More so, yes.
Even more so. And you're right, the church should lead the way.
The church should lead the way.
Blessings to you as you and Sean move forward with that. Well, the celebration of John Wimber's legacy begins this afternoon. It's happening at 2 p.m. in the Regent University Library. If you'd like more information, all you have to do is go to cbn.com. Great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here.